The morning air on Lyrian Prime carried whispers of fear through its crystal towers. Students floated, crawled, and shimmered their way across the university campus. But today felt different. Today, something terrible was coming to their peaceful world of learning. Professor Quileth adjusted her gossamer wings nervously as she entered the advanced xenobiology classroom. Her species, the moth collective, had survived for millions of years by being careful, quiet, and avoiding anything that might hurt their delicate bodies. The classroom looked like a museum display of fragile beauty. Crystal beings sat in perfect rows, their bodies catching the soft light and splitting it into rainbow patterns. Gas creatures floated near the ceiling, their forms shifting like colored smoke. Plant students rooted themselves in special soil patches, their leaves already trembling with anxiety. Everyone knew what was happening today. The first human student was coming to class. Quileth had read the files. Earth was a Class 12 deathworld, a planet so violent that its creatures fought each other just to stay alive. Humans were apex predators who survived in environments that would kill most galactic species in seconds. They breathed poison gas, drank acid rain, and somehow thrived in gravity fields that would crush civilized beings into dust. The door opened, with a soft hiss, and every student in the room froze. Tom Bailey walked in like he owned the place, though he had no idea of the terror he was causing. He was tall by galactic standards, standing over 6 feet with broad shoulders and the easy confidence of someone who had never been the most dangerous thing in any room. His backpack looked like it weighed more than 3 crystal students combined. His footsteps, though he tried to walk quietly, sent tiny vibrations through the floor that made the delicate students sway like flowers in a storm. "Good morning, everyone," Tom said with a bright smile, completely missing the way half the class had activated personal force fields or moved behind protective barriers. "I'm Tom Bailey from Earth, looking forward to learning with all of you." His voice was deep and rich, the kind of sound that came from a chest cavity designed to shout over howling winds and predator calls. To the whisper folk in the back corner, it sounded like controlled thunder. They huddled together, their translucent forms flickering with stress patterns. Quileth cleared her throat, a sound like tiny bells ringing. "Welcome, Student Bailey. Please take your designated seat." She pointed to a reinforced chair in the front row, specially built to handle what the university engineers called human structural requirements. The regular furniture would collapse under his weight like spun sugar. Tom nodded and walked to his seat, each step sending the atmospheric creatures higher toward the ceiling vents. One of the gas students, a young Zephyr named Wisp, accidentally got caught in the air displacement from Tom's movement and spent several seconds struggling to regain her proper form. As Tom sat down, the chair creaked ominously. The sound made everyone except Tom flinch. He pulled out his tablet and some notebooks, the simple action creating enough wind to rustle the leaves of every plant student in the room. "Now then," Quileth said, trying to regain control of her class, "today we'll be studying peaceful symbiosis in low-gravity environments." She activated a holographic display showing the gentle lunar moss, whose cells divided once every 1,000 years in a process so delicate it required meditation chambers and absolute silence. Tom raised his hand. The gesture was so sudden and forceful that it created a small sonic boom. The crystal students vibrated in harmony, their fear making beautiful but terrifying music. "Yes?" Quileth managed to say. "Is the division process really that slow?" "On Earth, our cells divide constantly. Human skin cells replace themselves every few weeks, and some cells in our digestive system turn over every few days." Tom spoke casually, like he was discussing the weather, not describing a biological process that sounded like science fiction to his classmates. A Verdani student in the third row dropped 3 leaves immediately. The concept of cells dividing rapidly was so foreign and violent that their entire nervous system rebelled against processing the information. Quileth's wings fluttered rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in her species. "Yes, well, the lunar moss represents the more civilized approach to cellular regeneration." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "That's fascinating. How do they handle injuries or infections with such slow healing?" The question was innocent enough, but it revealed the fundamental difference between deathworld thinking and galactic civilization. Tom's mind naturally went to injury and disease because on Earth, both were constant threats. But to the assembled students, his casual mention of such violent concepts was like discussing warfare during a poetry reading. A liquid student near the window, one of the flowing ones, lost cohesion for a moment, their form spreading into a worried puddle before they pulled themselves back together. Tom sneezed suddenly, just a small one, barely noticeable by human standards. But to the rest of the class, it was like a gunshot. The atmospheric creatures scattered in all directions. The crystal students harmonized in what could only be described as a chord of pure terror. Even Professor Quileth grabbed onto her podium for support. "Excuse me," Tom said, reaching for a tissue from his backpack. The simple motion of opening the zipper sounded like tearing metal to the sensitive hearing of his classmates. Quileth realized she was losing control of the situation. Half her students were showing signs of stress that could lead to serious health problems. The Whisper folk had gone completely silent, which for their species meant they were preparing for death. The plant students were releasing pheromones that smelled like panic to anyone with the right receptors. "Perhaps we should take an early break," she announced, her voice higher than usual. Tom looked around, finally noticing that something seemed off. His classmates were acting strange, though he couldn't quite figure out what was wrong. They seemed scared, but of what? The lesson had been going fine, he thought, as the other students filed out quickly, many of them casting worried glances. Back at Tom, he remained seated reviewing his notes. He had no idea that in the hallway outside, emergency protocols were being quietly activated, and several students were seriously considering dropping the class rather than spending another day in the same room as a Deathworlder. The atmospheric creatures were already spreading word through the ventilation system. The human was even more terrifying than the warnings had suggested, and this was just his first day. The smell of fear pheromones filled the ventilation system as students returned to class after the break. Tom sat in his reinforced chair, completely unaware that 3 different species had filed formal complaints about his presence, and 2 others had requested academic transfers to different planets entirely. He was reading ahead in his textbook, occasionally making small humming sounds as he found interesting passages. These quiet sounds, barely audible to human ears, resonated through the floor and walls like distant earthquakes to his classmates. The crystal students had arranged themselves in what they hoped was a protective formation, their bodies angled to deflect any sonic attacks. Professor Quileth returned to the podium with visible reluctance. Her gossamer wings were still trembling from the earlier incident, but university policy required her to continue the lesson. She had spent the break reviewing emergency procedures and positioning medical drones just outside the classroom door. "Let us continue with our study of gentle reproduction methods," she announced, activating a new holographic display. The image showed cloud jellies, ethereal creatures who lived in the upper atmospheres of gas giants and reproduced by sharing pleasant thoughts across vast distances. Tom's stomach chose that moment to rumble. The sound started deep in his chest and rolled through his body like distant thunder. To his classmates, it was the roar of some ancient predator preparing to hunt. The liquid students immediately began flowing toward the emergency drains, while the atmospheric creatures pressed themselves against the ceiling in terror. 2 of the Whisper folk simply fainted, their translucent forms flickering out like broken holograms. The plant students released such a burst of panic pheromones that the air recycling system activated emergency filtration protocols. Tom looked up from his textbook, noticing the commotion. "Sorry about that," he said cheerfully. "I skipped breakfast this morning." The casual admission that he regularly consumed organic matter sent another wave of horror through the classroom. Most galactic species survived on filtered nutrients, ambient energy, or carefully processed supplements. The idea of actually eating other organisms was considered deeply barbaric. Quileth forced herself to continue. "The cloud jellies, as you can see, maintain their population through a process of shared consciousness and gentle energy exchange." Tom raised his hand again. Every student braced for impact. "How do they handle genetic diversity? On Earth, sexual reproduction helps prevent genetic bottlenecks and allows species to adapt to changing environments." He paused, then added helpfully, "Most Earth species reproduce pretty actively. Some insects can have thousands of offspring in a single breeding cycle." The description of rapid, aggressive reproduction caused a Verdani student to immediately begin emergency budding, their panic response triggering an involuntary attempt to create offspring who might survive whatever horrible threat the human represented. Tiny plant shoots began emerging from their main stem in all directions. A crystal student in the back row cracked slightly, their harmonic resonance disrupted by the stress of imagining thousands of creatures appearing at once. The sound was like breaking glass, and it triggered sympathetic vibrations in 3 other crystal students. Tom noticed the distress and felt genuinely concerned. "Are they okay? Should I call for help?" His question, meant kindly, revealed another, terrifying aspect of human psychology. They actively sought out signs of injury or illness in others, presumably to identify weak prey. Several students began calculating the distance to the nearest exits. Professor Quileth's wings were now beating so rapidly, they created a visible blur. "They are simply adjusting to new information," she managed to say. Tom nodded understandingly and reached into his backpack for a water bottle. The sound of the cap being unscrewed was like a plasma torch to the sensitive hearing of the whisper folk. When he tilted his head back to drink, the sight of liquid disappearing into his throat horrified the liquid students, who interpreted it as some form of cannibalistic consumption. The act of drinking also caused Tom's throat to work visibly, muscles moving under his skin in a display of raw biological machinery that seemed incredibly primitive and violent to species who absorbed nutrients through their skin or respiratory systems. The cloud jellies, Quileth pressed on desperately, live for thousands of years in perfect harmony with their environment. "That's amazing," Tom said, genuinely impressed. "Humans only live about 80 years on average, but we pack a lot of activity into that time. We're always moving, building things, exploring new places." The description of humans as short-lived, but hyperactive creatures painted them as some sort of biological weapon, designed for rapid destruction and consumption of resources. The plant students began pulling their roots deeper into their soil patches, preparing for siege conditions. Tom's nose began to itch. He rubbed it absently, the gesture creating enough air displacement to send several atmospheric creatures tumbling. But the itch was persistent, building slowly in a way that Tom recognized with growing dread. He was going to sneeze. Tom tried to suppress it, pressing his lips together and squinting his eyes. But to the hypersensitive aliens around him, these facial expressions looked like the preparation for some sort of attack. His nostrils flared slightly as he fought against the building pressure. Emergency alerts began pinging on personal devices throughout the classroom. The crystal students started harmonizing in frequencies that roughly translated to "prepare for battle." The whisper folk began broadcasting final messages to their families through the school's communication system. Tom's eyes began to water from the effort of suppressing the sneeze. The sight of moisture appearing on a human face triggered primal fear responses in half the species present, many of whom associated visible fluids with either toxin secretion or preparation for violent action. The atmospheric creatures began evacuating through the ventilation system, their forms streaming toward the exits like colored smoke fleeing a fire, but most of the other students were too paralyzed with fear to move. Tom's face contorted as the sneeze built to critical pressure. Every muscle in his face tensed, his shoulders drew up, and his chest expanded to accommodate the massive intake of air that his species required for the explosive release that was coming. In the hallway outside, emergency sensors detected massive bioelectric activity and elevated pheromone levels. Automated systems began sealing adjacent classrooms and activating containment protocols. The sneeze was coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Tom felt the tickle growing stronger in his nose, that familiar building pressure that every human knew meant trouble was coming. He pressed his finger against his upper lip, trying the old trick his grandmother had taught him. But it was no use. The cold he had been fighting was winning. Around him, the classroom had transformed into something resembling a disaster preparedness drill. The crystal students had formed what their species called a resonance shield, linking their harmonic frequencies to create a protective barrier. Unfortunately, their fear was making them vibrate at frequencies that sounded like funeral music, which was making everyone else even more nervous. The liquid students had partially evacuated through the emergency drains, leaving behind only the bravest volunteers who maintained just enough form to observe what they were certain would be a violent biological attack. They positioned themselves near the walls, ready to splash to safety at the first sign of danger. Tom's breathing changed as his respiratory system prepared for the sneeze. Each inhale was deeper and more forceful than the last, causing pressure. Changes in the room that the atmospheric creatures interpreted as weather manipulation. They began spinning in tight defensive spirals, their gaseous forms creating visible whirlwinds near the ceiling. Professor Quyleth had abandoned all pretense of continuing the lesson. Her gossamer wings were folded protectively over her body as she crouched behind the podium, one delicate hand hovering over the emergency communication system. She had never activated a university-wide crisis alert before, but the readings on her biological threat detector were approaching levels typically associated with volcanic eruptions. The Verdani students had completely shut down their photosynthetic processes and were drawing all available nutrients into their root systems, preparing their bodies for what they assumed would be a toxic attack. Their leaves had turned pale gray, the plant equivalent of fear paralysis. Tom tried holding his breath, puffing out his cheeks in a way that made him look even more threatening to his audience. The sight of a human storing air for what appeared to be a massive respiratory attack sent the Whisper folk into complete panic mode. Their forms began flickering rapidly between visible and invisible as their species' fear response activated. One of the atmospheric creatures, a young student named Draft, made the mistake of floating too close to Tom just as he was struggling against the building sneeze. The electromagnetic field generated by Tom's neural activity was strong enough to disrupt Draft's delicate gaseous composition, causing the poor student to lose cohesion and scatter across 3 different air currents. "Oh no, are you okay?" Tom asked, genuinely concerned about the student who had just dissolved into colored mist. But his words came out strained and nasal due to his efforts to suppress the sneeze, making him sound like he was speaking through some sort of threatening apparatus. The concern in Tom's voice, combined with his obvious physical distress, created a terrifying combination for his classmates. Humans, they had learned from their research, were pack hunters who showed care for their own kind while being ruthlessly efficient at eliminating threats. The fact that Tom seemed upset about Draft's condition suggested he might be evaluating the effectiveness of whatever attack he was preparing to launch. Tom's eyes began to water more severely as the sneeze pressure built beyond his ability to contain it. The sight of moisture streaming down a human face triggered ancient survival instincts in species across the galaxy. Many creatures secreted fluids as a precursor to attacks, and the volume of liquid Tom was producing suggested he was preparing something catastrophic. Emergency lights began flashing in the hallway outside as the university's automated systems detected what they classified as an imminent biological event. Security drones moved into position, though their programming had no protocols for dealing with human respiratory functions. The crystal students' protective harmonics grew more intense, creating visible vibrations in the air that made the room shimmer like a heat mirage. But their formation was breaking down as individual students began cracking under the stress, their bodies unable to maintain structural integrity while channeling such intense frequencies. Tom's shoulders began to shake as his entire respiratory system synchronized for the massive release of pressure. His diaphragm contracted, his chest expanded to maximum capacity, and every muscle in his upper body tensed for what was coming. The plant students detected the change in Tom's bioelectric field and interpreted it as the final phase of whatever attack he was preparing. They began releasing spores desperately, hoping to create enough airborne particles to interfere with his targeting systems. The spores filled the air with a shimmering cloud that only made Tom's urge to sneeze even stronger. "Professor." Quyleth's hand finally moved to the emergency alert button. She had held out as long as she could, hoping that somehow the situation might resolve peacefully, but the biological readings were off the charts. Whatever the human was preparing to do, it was going to be bigger than anything in the university's records. Tom felt the point of no return approaching. His body had taken over, preparing for a sneeze that had built up enough pressure to clear his sinuses completely. He tried one last time to grab a tissue from his backpack, but the movement only created more air turbulence that scattered the atmospheric students even further. The whisper folk had stopped whispering entirely, which for their species meant they were preparing for immediate death. Their forms became completely transparent as they channeled all their energy into final messages to their families. Every sensitive device in the room was registering massive changes in air pressure, electromagnetic fields, and bioelectric activity. The readings looked like something between a small explosion and a localized weather event. Tom's face contorted into the expression every human recognized as the final moment before a big sneeze. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes squeezed shut, and his entire body drew in the deepest breath he had taken all day. The room held its breath with him, or at least those students who still breathed air. Even the automated system seemed to pause, as if the entire university was waiting for whatever was about to happen. Tom's chest reached maximum expansion, his muscles locked into position, and every nerve in his respiratory system fired at once. The sneeze was coming, and after all the buildup and pressure, it was going to be massive. The sneeze erupted from Tom like a biological explosion that had been building for millions of years of evolution. His body released all the stored pressure in a single, devastating achoo that registered on seismic equipment 3 buildings away. The sound alone was catastrophic. At 160 miles per hour, the expelled air hit the front row of students like a hurricane. The carefully arranged crystal students shattered their protective formation instantly, their harmonic shields dissolving under the assault of pure sonic energy. Several smaller crystal beings went into emergency hibernation mode, their bodies shutting down all non-essential functions to survive what they perceived as a massive acoustic attack. The projectile spray that accompanied the sneeze was even worse. Thousands of microscopic droplets launched from Tom's respiratory system at velocities that would have been considered ammunition by galactic weapons standards. The droplets carried traces of human DNA, bacteria, viruses, and other biological material that set off every contamination alarm in the building. Draft. The atmospheric student who had been trying to reconstitute after his earlier encounter with Tom's electromagnetic field was caught directly in the blast zone. The force of the sneeze scattered his gaseous form completely, sending parts of him streaming toward 3 different ventilation intakes. It would take him hours to gather himself back together, assuming he could find all the pieces. The liquid students who had bravely remained in the classroom were hit by the pressure wave and splashed against the walls like water balloons. They immediately began emergency protocols to prevent contamination from human biological matter, their forms rippling with patterns that roughly translated to, "We're all going to die." Professor Quileth was blown backward off her feet, her gossamer wings unable to provide any stability against the hurricane-force winds Tom had just generated. She landed in a heap behind her podium, temporarily stunned and convinced that the human had just launched some sort of biological weapon. The Verdani, students reacted to the sudden introduction of foreign organic matter by going into full defensive mode. They dropped every leaf simultaneously, released clouds of defensive toxins that made the air shimmer with warnings, and began rapidly growing protective bark over their vulnerable spots. 3 of them started budding uncontrollably, their panic response creating dozens of tiny offspring who immediately burrowed as deep as possible into their soil patches. The whisper folk had the worst reaction of all. The sonic blast from Tom's sneeze overloaded their sensitive audio processing systems, causing feedback loops that made them flicker in and out of visible spectrum like broken holograms. 2 of them actually phased out of normal space-time temporarily, an extreme trauma response that their species only used when facing extinction-level threats. But the chaos was just beginning. Tom's sneeze had triggered every emergency system in the university. Hazmat alerts screamed through the corridors as sensors detected unknown biological agents dispersed at high velocity. Quarantine protocols activated automatically, sealing the classroom with blast doors that were designed to contain chemical spills and radioactive leaks. Security drones swarmed the building, their weapon systems powered up and targeting the source of what their programming classified as a possible bioweapon deployment. Emergency medical teams mobilized with full protective suits, assuming they were responding to some sort of terrorist attack. The electromagnetic pulse generated by Tom's neural activity during the sneeze had fried several pieces of sensitive equipment. The holographic projector sparked and died, leaving behind the acrid smell of burning circuits that added to the atmosphere of disaster. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red warning colors that made the scene look even more apocalyptic. Tom, completely oblivious to the devastation he had caused, reached casually for his tissue box. The simple movement sent the few atmospheric students who had managed to avoid the initial blast scurrying toward the ceiling vents in terror. "Excuse me," he said pleasantly, dabbing at his nose with a tissue. "Sorry about that. This cold is really getting to me today." His cheerful apology, delivered in the midst of what looked like a war zone, was perhaps the most terrifying thing yet. The casual way he dismissed such a massive display of biological violence suggested that for humans, this was completely normal behavior. If this was what they considered a minor bodily function, what were they capable of when they were actually trying to be dangerous? The tissue he used to clean his nose was immediately classified as hazardous waste by the room's automated systems. Containment drones moved in to secure it before its human biological contaminants could spread further. Professor Quyleth slowly picked herself up from behind her podium, her gossamer wings tattered and her academic robes disheveled. She looked around at her classroom, which now resembled the aftermath of a natural disaster. Students were scattered, hiding, unconscious, or in various states of biological panic. Equipment was damaged, the air filtration system was working overtime, and emergency lights were flashing everywhere. "Class dismissed," she whispered, though her voice was lost in the chaos of alarms and automated safety announcements. The dean's voice crackled over the emergency communication system. "All students and faculty, please remain calm. We have reports of a possible biological incident in Classroom 7. Hazmat teams are responding." Tom looked around with growing confusion. Something was definitely wrong, but he couldn't figure out what. Everyone seemed upset. The lights had turned red and there were sirens going off somewhere. Had there been an accident while he was sneezing? He raised his hand to ask if everything was okay, but the gesture sent the remaining mobile students fleeing toward the exits. Within seconds, Tom found himself alone in a damaged classroom, surrounded by emergency lights and the sound of approaching hazmat teams. Outside the sealed classroom, university officials were frantically trying to contact Earth authorities to find out if sneezing was some sort of human attack behavior, and whether they should expect more aggressive actions from their exchange student. 3 hours later, Tom sat in the university medical bay wearing a containment suit that made him look like a friendly astronaut. The hazmat teams had spent 2 hours decontaminating the classroom while he answered increasingly confused questions about human respiratory functions from a panel of xenobiologists who seemed convinced he was describing military weapons. Dr. Helix, the university's chief medical officer, was a tall, elegant being from the Spiral Collective, whose body resembled living mercury formed into a vaguely humanoid shape. She had been studying Tom's biological readings with the fascination of someone examining an impossible puzzle. "You mean to tell me," she said, her voice rippling with harmonic undertones, "that all humans do this sneezing behavior when their respiratory systems detect irritants?" Tom nodded earnestly. "Yes, absolutely. It's completely automatic. We can try to hold it back sometimes, but it usually happens whether we want it to or not." The panel of doctors exchanged what Tom was learning to recognize as expressions of horror, though they looked different on each species. The crystal representative actually chimed a funeral dirge, while the plant-based medical expert dropped several leaves in distress. "And the velocity of expelled material reaches speeds of over 160 of your miles per hour?" Dr. Helix continued. "I guess so. I never really measured it." Tom shrugged, which caused his containment suit to crinkle loudly. The sound made 3 of the medical staff take a step backward. "It's just something that happens when we need to clear our sinuses." Professor Quyleth, who had been receiving treatment for wing damage and shock, looked up from her medical bed with something approaching admiration. Your species weaponized their own immune response? We didn't weaponize anything, Tom protested. It's just biology. Like how you flutter your wings when you're nervous or how crystal people sing when they're scared. The comparison seemed to help slightly. The medical staff began to understand that what they had witnessed was not an attack, but simply how human bodies worked. This realization was somehow even more terrifying, because it meant humans walked around every day with the potential for accidental biological warfare. Dean Vortis, an ancient gas creature who had been running the university for over 3 centuries, floated into the medical bay with the slow dignity of someone who had seen everything the galaxy could offer. Today, however, his usual calm was disturbed by swirling patterns that indicated deep concern. "Student Bailey," the dean said, his voice like wind through crystal caves, "we need to discuss your continued attendance at our institution." Tom's heart sank. He had worked so hard to get accepted into the exchange program, and now they were going to kick him out because of a sneeze. "I understand if you want me to leave," Tom said quietly. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I didn't even know. I was causing problems until everything started going crazy." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and it began to shift something in the room's atmosphere. Dr. Helix leaned forward, her mercury form rippling with curiosity. "You genuinely had no idea that your biological functions would cause such distress?" "None at all," Tom admitted. "Where I come from, sneezing in class might be a little rude, but it wouldn't scare anyone. People would just say, 'Bless you,' and move on with the lesson." Professor Quillith made a sound that might have been laughter if it hadn't been quite so high-pitched. "Bless you? You perform religious ceremonies after biological attacks?" "It's not a biological attack," Tom said patiently. "And it's not really religious anymore. It's just something polite people say, like 'excuse me' or 'thank you.'" Dean Vortis swirled thoughtfully. In his centuries of education administration, he had never encountered a problem quite like this. Here was a student who was genuinely dangerous to his classmates, but only because his normal biological functions were incompatible with their physiology. Tom wasn't malicious or violent, he was simply human. "What if we provided you with a biological suppression field?" Dr. Helix suggested suddenly. "Something that could contain your respiratory events and reduce their impact on sensitive species?" Tom perked up. "You could do that? Would it hurt?" "Not at all. It would simply create a small, containment zone around you that would absorb the kinetic energy and filter out biological particles." Dr. Helix was already pulling up holographic designs. "We use similar technology for hazardous material research. And we could modify the classroom," Professor Quillith added, her academic enthusiasm overcoming her earlier trauma. "Reinforced seating areas for students who need protection, enhanced air filtration, maybe some dampening fields to reduce sonic disruption." Dean Vortis considered the proposal. It would be expensive and complicated, but the educational value could be enormous. If they could make this work, they would be the first university in the galaxy to successfully integrate a Deathworlder into their academic community. "There would be conditions," the dean said finally. "Mandatory safety equipment restricted, access to certain areas, and constant monitoring of your biological functions." "I'll do whatever it takes," Tom said eagerly. "This place is amazing and I want to learn from everyone. I just need to figure out how to do it without accidentally terrorizing my classmates." Over the following weeks, Tom became something of a celebrity on campus. The sneezing incident had been recorded by security cameras and was being studied by xenobiologists across the galaxy as an example of Deathworlder physiology in action. Students from other universities came to observe him from behind protective barriers, fascinated by his casual displays of biological violence. But more importantly, Tom's presence began to change how the university thought about diversity and accommodation. If they could find ways for someone as dangerous as a human to participate in galactic education, what other barriers could they overcome? His first successful graduation ceremony, 6 months later, was attended by representatives from dozens of species who had never before considered that Deathworlders might have something to contribute to civilized society. Tom wore his biological suppression field like a badge of honor, and when he walked across the stage to receive his degree in interspecies relations, the carefully controlled applause was heard throughout the galaxy. Professor Quilleth, who had become something of an expert in human biology, wrote in her final report, "While terrifying, dangerous, and completely incompatible with civilized life as we understand it, humans possess a remarkable capacity for adaptation and genuine concern for others. Student Bailey has demonstrated that even the most violent biological functions can be managed through proper safety protocols and mutual understanding." Tom kept that report framed in his office when he returned to Earth as the galaxy's first certified human-alien relations specialist. His sneezing incident had become required reading in xenobiology courses, and his techniques for peaceful coexistence were being studied by diplomatic corps throughout known space. Sometimes late at night, Tom would look up at the stars and smile, remembering his classmates who had been so terrified of something as simple as a sneeze. He hoped they understood now that humans might be dangerous, but they were also capable of friendship, learning, and growth. After all, even deathworlders could be taught proper manners.